Christian persecution is on the rise in China, Africa, and the Middle East. What's being done to combat it? Ambassador at Large for International Religious Freedom, Sam Brownback, is here with analysis. New visa rules are causing panic in immigrant communities, while the coronavirus outbreak spreads across the globe. Acting Deputy Secretary for the Department of Homeland Security, Ken Cuccinelli, is here with an update. And we'll look at the challenges facing parents raising daughters. Pediatrician and author of Raising a Strong Daughter in a Toxic Culture, Dr. MEG MEEKER, shares her insights. The World Over begins right now.
Now, from Washington, D.C., Raymond Arroyo.
A warm welcome to all of you joining us in the United States and the world over. A great show for you tonight. Ambassador Sam Brownback, Ken Cuccinelli, and Dr. MEG MEEKER are all straight ahead. If you'd like to comment on tonight's show, send me a tweet. I'm at Raymond Arroyo. Lots to cover. But first, some good news from Alabama. Good news. How's that for a start? Mother Angelica will be the first religious inducted into the Alabama Women's Hall of Fame. The induction ceremony will take place on March 5th at Judson College at their campus in Morrison, Alabama. Previous inductees include Coretta Scott King, Harper Lee, and others. Glad to see Mother receive a bit of the recognition she greatly deserves. Now, global religious persecution continues to be a problem all over the world. Earlier this month, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo announced the creation of the International Religious Freedom Alliance, seeking to combat religious persecution. Joining me now with his analysis is the Ambassador at Large for International Religious Freedom at the U.S. State Department, Ambassador Sam Brownback. Thank you. Welcome back.
You bet.
Great to see you.
Good to join you.
I want to start with this Religious Freedom Alliance. What is the focus? What is it designed to do, and what are your hopes for it?
It's designed to be an activist club. And by that I mean we want a group of nations that will come together and actually push aggressively on the issue of religious freedom. This is something that's deep in the heart of the United States. We believe in it, although it's taken us a while really to kind of get our act together to how do we push it and go at it. Well, now we're really trying to get an alliance of nations, and we've got it. We've got 27 countries. We've got more that want to join, and we're going to use this, and we're going to be a part of this to push open these gates of religious persecution around the world that have been increasingly going shut around the world.
Yeah. And what's been the response? What are people telling you? We've had some of the ambassadors in other countries sit here and tell us about their input, what they're trying in their country. What are you hearing?
It's been interesting. We're getting already projects put forward by other countries saying, hey, we ought to do this, we ought to as a group do that, or how many of you would be willing to join us on this? And one of the best things that I heard was a country of particular concern, that's our Bad Boys Club.
Right.
One of the ambassadors there was telling me, you know, it's really good the United States is pushing this. This is a key thing to be pushing around the world and to getting more people to open up on religious freedom. It's good for the bad actors if they would open up on this, but a lot of times they view it as we've got to have a substantial outside force to cause us to move, to be able to overcome a lot of maybe domestic inherent things that are against religious minorities. That's usually who it's against. It's usually a religious majority that pushes against a religious minority.
Yeah. The 2020 World Watch List, published by Open Doors, found that persecution among Christians is really at an unprecedented level. 1 in 8 Christians face persecution daily. Now, much of the persecution is being done in communist countries or places where there's radical Islamic influence. How do you go about advancing religious freedom in these places, places like North Korea or Pakistan? How do you do that?
Well, some of them are tougher than others, that's for sure. And North Korea has been a very difficult case. But I think the thing you do in these cases is you get an alliance of countries, A. B, you start showing these countries that this is in their best interest to open up to religious freedom. If you want to grow your economy, if you want to have less terrorism, the right answer is religious freedom, and we've got the data to show it. And if you want to really be a country that's moving forward with the rest of the world, this is this fundamental human right that you have to guarantee. We're starting to see more Muslim majority countries, the government, saying we've got to do this sort of monochromatic view of religion that everybody has to fit within our Sunni or Sufi design of Islam is a loser for your country to grow and prosper. It won't work. You can't attract the capital. You can't attract the outside people. You can't attract the different ideas. And they're starting to feel it and see it, and some of them are starting to change.
Is that the incentive that you offer them? Is that the carrot that you offer these countries? Look, you're holding back the possibilities and the opportunities for your country by pursuing this path?
Yeah, more so. And we're starting to see some nations look at it and saying, you know, this isn't working for us. This is a dead-end street. And usually what they're doing is they're kowtowing to some majority religious population that they look at and they know this isn't the right way for us. This isn't a good thing for us as a nation. So they know it. They're just trying to figure out how do we move it along, and we're going to add pressure to that.
Yeah. Naturally, China comes out in this conversation regularly about Christian persecution. That World Watch list I mentioned a moment ago, roughly they claim 100 million Christians have been persecuted in China. In fact, the director of Open Doors said, China is a blueprint for dictators around the world. Are you afraid that others might take that blueprint up? Because here you have a country that is growing economically, that is a powerhouse, that is a military juggernaut in the region. What do you say to them?
We're very concerned. It's my number one concern because, and it's not because it may be the deadliest place. There are places that it's very deadly to be a Christian or any faith. They've got 1 million Muslims in concentration camps right now. They've already decimated culturally Tibet and the Tibetan Buddhist religion, and they're going after the Christians and everybody else. What I'm really concerned about is their use of these artificial intelligence, high technology, data-driven algorithms that start targeting people because they practice their faith.
Right.
And then start not just putting them in jail, because I think the face of oppression in the future will be less people put in jail and killed and more people marginalized in the society. You can't get a...
You won't get a job, you won't get a license.
You can't get your kids in school, you can't get this license. Now, if you had just stopped going to the mosque or to the church, everything goes fine for you. Everything's fine. Well, and then anybody that pings you on the cell phone gets your same bad social credit score in
they're connected, yeah.
Because that creates the social pressure on you. Will you stop going to church? You're hurting me.
What can we do about the biometrics, the cameras now, facial recognition on churches? We're hearing reports of that throughout China. I mean, what can we do as an outside government to pressure them to move away from this?
You know, I've heard from Chinese Christians saying they're more concerned about this religious oppression now than the Cultural Revolution under Mao. They think it's more sinister. They think it's more difficult to overcome. The Mao era created a group of saints and really people that would speak out in the culture. This one they're really scared of. I think the thing we can do is really go at the technology, and you're seeing the administration doing this now, limiting the use of U.S. technology into that system, limit the technology from China being able to come into our system.
This Huawei thing has become a major obsession for Secretary Pompeo.
And should be.
Yeah, where we're denying Huawei access to certain part manufacturers in the United States, which they were relying on for their technology, and trying to stop European countries from embracing Huawei, which is they're promising 5G overnight, a network that you can put up and build yourself, and they're doing it cheaply, which is always the allure.
And the results end up in Beijing. So you plug the system in here, and where's the back door? Where does this technology and information end up? And how can it be used? So I know this is probably the biggest way we can push back. You know, it's interesting. I'm reading now a book on Reagan as a crusader against communism, against Soviet communism, and he did for decades. When he was on GE radio, he was against it. I am convinced if he were around now, he would be coming after the Chinese communists, and he would be saying, look at what they're doing, and look at how much oppression they're putting in their society. And he was not satisfied with détente. He said détente just let them, froze us in position and let them improve. It's interesting read right now when you think of it, of what would Reagan be saying right now, and he would be going after the communist Chinese.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Look, I want to talk a moment while we're on this topic. is there the political will to say no to the Chinese, given the economic incentives, the cheap labor, the speed with which technology can be produced in that country and other goods, as opposed to Europe or in the United States?
God bless Donald Trump. I mean, before, we just haven't had presidents willing to fight with the Chinese. No. And we've known this is happening for decades. And we've seen it, and most of us, and I put myself, unfortunately, in the category saying, well, we think the Chinese communists will grow out of it.
If we trade with them, they'll become Ohio.
Yeah, they'll help us. They'll change over time. Just look at what happened in Taiwan and South Korea and Japan. Well, they haven't. It hasn't happened. And this president has been willing to take them on. And, you know, that's why I say God bless him, because nobody else has been willing to do it. And I really think this is one of the key things of his presidency, is finally confronting China as they should have been confronted decades ago.
I got to talk about Taiwan. You mentioned it a moment ago. You visited Taiwan. They were not included in this Religious Freedom Alliance launched earlier this month. Why not?
You know, it's an alliance of nations, and under our one China policy, we consider that the mainland China and Taiwan not that case. And this is an alliance of nations. This is a phase one of the alliance, and we're going to continue discussion. I had discussions this week with Taiwanese officials. So we'll see where that moves forward. But right now, this is an alliance of nations.
I need to talk, you mentioned the Uyghur Muslims who are in these concentration camps. They've faced very little pushback, the Chinese, from Muslim-majority countries. They've been very reluctant to jump in. In fact, the Pakistan Prime Minister, he came out and said, wait a minute, Beijing was with us when the cards were down, so we're basically going to sit back. Does that stun you, that these are people, co-religionists, who are just willing to lie down for China?
It does. And I've said it to a number of them. I said, you know, what's going on here? And, you know, so I've raised it a number of times. At the bottom line of it, the Chinese play rough. They play with dollars. They push back very aggressively. And I think what you're seeing is the impact of that on a number of these countries that, you know, we have a certain set of rules, and people, you know, see the United States and they know our rules and our Constitution, and we follow these things and we go by it. So it's like we've got these Marcus of Queensberry rule that we fight by. Chinese don't fight by those.
No, they're asymmetrical. They're playing every angle.
Just, you know, and that's what we get told by these countries, is they play rougher.
Yeah, and you know, you mentioned Ronald Reagan a minute ago. Ronald Reagan wasn't in a town. The Hollywood then wasn't owned by China or controlled by it the way it is today. That market is very reliant on Asian distribution, video sales in those markets. In fact, the whole budgets are predicated on that. We didn't do business with Soviet Russia, and maybe that should be the approach now vis-a-vis China, given the profound human rights and religious outrages happening in that country.
They've been a big enabler of human rights abuses, that alone what they're doing in their own country. But I think you're seeing the agenda and the backbone of the United States stiffen up, and this is a bipartisan issue, I'd point out. I mean, the president deserves all the credit for starting the fight, but this is backed by Republicans and Democrats and broad swatches of the U.S. public. They're very concerned about it.
I was delighted to see last week Cardinal Zen sat where you're sitting, the Cardinal Zen, former Bishop of Hong Kong, who's been a warrior on the issues of human rights and religious rights for his people. Nancy Pelosi gave him an honor last week. Hats off to her for that. He awakened everybody to the Zionization happening in these churches, religious texts being perverted, clergy being rounded up. What can we do to help these people while they watch the faith that many of them fought and died for, or watched relatives die for, evaporate before their eyes?
Yeah, I think we stand with them. I think we continue to put them on like country of particular concern. I think we continue to raise the issue. I think we continue to build these alliances to push back. Then the alliance, a number of these countries are pushing back against China, and China tried to dissuade countries from joining this alliance. They were actively out there saying, don't join this alliance. They were actively out there trying to get countries not to come to our ministerials. Well, we're going to keep pushing against that, and we need to provide backbone to these other countries to stand up to a bully. to stand up to what China's doing. They may play rough, but we're going to play tough. We're going to push back.
Should tariffs and trade be tied to human rights and religious rights?
You know, we've got a series of sanctions that are usable under the country of particular concern and religious freedom issues, and I think all tools should be looked at as possibilities and ones that we can use. We know the economic issues are ones that the Chinese will pay attention to a lot more than a lot of times rhetoric that we'll put forward, and we'll accuse them of different things, and they're kind of yeah, fine. But you know, when you start touching the money.
Well, or when you begin broadcasting the truth. Look, I've seen colleagues at the Wall Street Journal who've reported on this. You saw what happened. 3 of those reporters rounded up, evicted from the country. We regularly get hit. When I have Cardinal Zen on, or I have somebody talking about religious persecution, probably after your appearance, Ambassador, you'll get these, you know, the bots out there who, you know, well, I'm a priest in China, and how dare you say this? I'm sorry, many of these people, God bless them, they're compromised too and in deep trouble because they have to serve their masters. So I get it. As you said earlier, the Chinese are playing on 3 or 4 different levels. We usually play on one. I need to shift a bit to sexual violence toward Christian women that we're seeing used all over the world, particularly in Africa, Boko Haram. And these incidents, they're really underreported, but some reportage says there could be as many as 23 per day, especially in Africa, spreading to Pakistan and India. How do you work with governments in these places to curb this type of violence that, A, doesn't get reported on regularly, but we know Boko Haram in Nigeria and other organizations are implementing it as a tool?
I think we need to do more. I think we need to get the data up and lift it up more to where people can see and know it. Any number of places I've been when I do interviews with women in the field, this issue comes up. And it's either happened to them or it's happened to a daughter or a mother. There is a prevalence of this, and it's a tool of war.
Right.
And it's a tool of intimidation of the utmost degree. So I think we need to lift it up more as an issue and make it more of a centerpiece issue. It's one that we raise, but this is the sort of thing that I think that the Religious Freedom Alliance can do more of. Like, religious institutions get purposely attacked in conflict zones as a cultural dagger.
Right.
Well, women get attacked often as just this sort of dagger going right at the culture and who the place is as well, and an intimidation factor.
Right.
And we need to really, I think, be more protective of those places that the terrorists and others go at.
No, they're soft targets, and very powerful and potent.
Powerful targets. Yeah.
Here in the United States, we saw an uptick in anti-Semitism. The Little Sisters of the Poor are back at the Supreme Court, still fighting the contraceptive mandate. I want to play something for you. This is last month. Attorney General William Barr had this to say during an interview about religious liberty in the United States. Listen.
The problem today is not that religious people are trying to impose their views on non-religious people. It's the opposite. It's that militant secularists are trying to impose their values on a religious people, and they're not accommodating the freedom of religion of people of faith.
Now, I know your expertise is international religious freedom, but can you comment at all on the contraction of religious freedom in the United States itself and what we should or could be doing?
Yeah, I mean, that's the one place I don't have portfolio is the United States. But I will say on Attorney General Barr, his speech at Notre Dame, outside of the president's speeches, is one of the great speeches of this administration. And he was really putting his finger on this topic. And I think a lot of people really resonated with that, and they were saying, you know, what's going on in our own nation? So I hope that the issue gets discussed more. It's obviously an issue before the Supreme Court. So it's making its way up the statutes and for as far as the courts, but it needs to make its way into the culture. That's where the discussion needs to happen more now. It's going to make its way up through the legal system, but it needs to happen in the culture, and we need to be, as a country, standing up as the beacon of hope on freedom, and that freedom includes religious freedom as a foundational one. As long as you're peacefully practicing your faith, you should be entitled to do that.
Yeah, and fly your colors. Yeah, people are very reticent these days. They've gone into hiding almost. It's as if it's something dirty. I mean, and the culture is, there's cultural pressure for it to be so. I want to move on to a State Department-sponsored event you took part in about the Abrahamic Faith Initiative. This happened in Rome. Tell me about it. What was the intention? Who came?
Well, the intention of it was to get the three great monotheistic faiths in the world, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, together around a common thought that our faith does not support the use of violence in promoting the faith. So many places around the world, religion is being used as a tool of war, when religion is a tool of peace, and it should be used that way. And so what we're trying to do is to get the Abrahamic faith together, the ones that all claim Abraham as the starter of it. We could all line them up in front of Abraham's tomb and say, let's be a tool for peace and peace building around the world.
Ambassador Sam Brownback, always a pleasure. Hope you'll come back.
I'll do it.
Thank you. Thanks very much. You can follow the work of Ambassador at Large Sam Brownback on behalf of international religious freedom at the U.S. State Department. Go to their website, state.gov. New visa rules by the Trump administration are causing concern among immigrant communities, and the coronavirus outbreak continues to spread across the globe. Joining me now to discuss this and much more, former Virginia Attorney General and current Acting Deputy Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, Ken Cuccinelli. Ken, thank you for being here. Great to see you. Now, to date, 2,126 people have died from this coronavirus. All but 11 have been in China. But there are over 75,000 cases reported around the world. Reported. Right. And we're going to get to that in a moment. Yes. 2 passengers on that Diamond Princess cruise in Japan have died. The others remain quarantined. What is the update from Homeland Security vis-a-vis the Diamond Princess cruise liner? And how does this relate to the 14 who tested positive for the virus?
So we ran 2 repatriation flights of American citizens who were on that Diamond Princess cruise ship. Now, not every American chose to come back. Some of them wanted to stay in place. There are advantages to staying in place. There are advantages to coming home. One of the advantages of coming home is you end up in the country with the best health care in the world. Right. And particularly for emergencies like this. And that's a challenging logistical undertaking. Sure. And as you noted, a significant number of them have tested positive for the virus. And they are quarantined now.
Where are they?
Well, some are at the University of Nebraska, where they have a very high-end facility to address patients like this, and then some of them are at one of our Air Force bases as well.
Wow.
So,
and they're there for 2 weeks, right? It's
at least 2 weeks.
Quarantine
2 weeks clean, yes.
Oh, 2 weeks clean.
This is post any sign of virus, yes.
Wow. Now, is that the standard for anyone traveling
That's what we've been using since we started imposing restrictions on travel. 2 weeks of quarantine, for instance, for any of the Americans who came from Hubei province, which is the epicenter of this disease right now. They had to be quarantined for 2 weeks. For others who have just traveled in China but not in Hubei, they had to self-quarantine in their home for 2 weeks for their benefit and the benefit of the community.
And what about people traveling from China? Is there? Can you travel?
If they're not American, they're blocked from coming into the country.
Can't come into the United States.
Cannot come into the
United
States.
What about via Canada or Europe or Mexico?
So that's called broken travel.
Okay.
We are tracking broken travel, and so you can't come in directly either. Is it possible for us to miss a person or two? It's possible, but the Customs Border Protection folks, Transportation Security Administration, they're really good. So we have not had significant problems in that front. But it's important for people to realize, look, you don't just keep a virus like this completely out. You don't seal yourself off. There is serious math at play here. And what we're trying to do is slow down the opportunity for the virus to come to the United States. And we have succeeded at that so far. And President Trump's been very clear with those of us on his task force to err on the side of safety of the American public.
Right.
And we've done that so far.
And the longer you can keep it from the shores, the better.
Well, that's right. And you need to use that time to prepare for the eventuality that it may
could reach
break
the
out
shores.
here.
How close are we to understanding the origins of this and what it is? Do you trust the Chinese are sharing information with us?
So, first of all, the Chinese are doing better than they did, say, in the SARS epidemic in terms of sharing information. They put the genetic strand up on the internet quickly so our scientists could go to work even before we had samples. Nonetheless, it's China. And, you know, we're not convinced they're sharing everything, to say the least. They also have a healthcare system that effectively only has hospitals. So only the most serious cases are showing up in their case count, because if you're not hospital worthy, you don't go see a doctor in China. And so your case doesn't get counted. They've also run out of tests. We've struggled with the tests as well, but our CDC has done a really good job. They're the best in the world at attacking a problem like this. In fact, the Chinese have copied our CDC.
Oh, really?
And their scientists have been talking to ours for 6, 7, 8 weeks now. But it's amazing to keep in mind, this little bug literally hasn't existed on Earth in human beings for 3 months. So we're learning an enormous amount all the time.
What do you make of the
about it.
stories that perhaps it was hatched in a lab? We just don't know. We don't have enough information.
We don't know. Previous coronaviruses went from a bat to another animal to humans. And so the SARS went to a civet's cat,
Right.
Which I believe was eaten in China.
Yes.
And then MERS, which is the second corona-type virus, went to a camel in the Middle East. That's Middle East respiratory syndrome. And this one, there's suspicion that it went through an animal called a pangolin, where there's, I have read in some literature, there's well over a 95% genetic match with what we're seeing showing up now. But to your point, we haven't really traced it all the way back. There is a World Health Organization team over there now on the ground. It's smaller than we would have liked. It does have American representation, again, less than we would have liked. But if they're given full access, and that's really the outstanding question right now, we'll be able to trace it back to the origins.
I guess one of the good things of dealing with individuals who are infected is our doctors can get a look at this thing and figure out.
Well, that's right. We're learning from every single case in the United States, and we've been learning from the cases in the United States since we spotted the first one in Washington, in the state of Washington. And
I read
we've only had 2, though, that started here. They were spouses of cases who traveled back from China.
I read a report today that they're on the cusp, 3 weeks from verifying any vaccine or coming up with any vaccine.
Verifying simply means knowing there's a path to run to it. We're a year plus out from a vaccine,
really,
on a best case scenario. So there are, in between nothing and vaccines, there are what are called therapeutics that ameliorate the effects. And there are experiments going on, double-blind experiments, the right way to do it in China, because they have so many cases, with people right now. So some of our scientists are communicating with them on that and helping them with that. We are helping China. We are helping that whole part of the world as a nation in both money and expertise to try to ameliorate this, to ameliorate the suffering in their countries, and keep our own safe.
You are spending every day, I know, focused on this problem and warding it off and trying to keep it at bay.
I'm spending a lot more time with viruses than I thought I would.
I'll bet. Now you're a virus expert.
Yes.
Lucky you. Given your expertise and those of your colleagues, might this have been a tool of warfare, a way to penetrate our homeland security or in other countries?
I don't think it would have intentionally been considered so. It may have been studied in a lab. We study coronaviruses as well to be prepared in case someone makes the sort of attempt you're describing. But we certainly don't think that was going on here. But you know, I've read the same stories you have about the prospects that it may have come from a lab in Wuhan. They do have a class 4 biological weapons lab there, and but what we do with ours is study these things so we're prepared. So it isn't just a factory for making offensive weapons, it's also a study point. And in theory, it's possible something may have escaped there. If you're China and you'd had SARS and you started the SARS epidemic before, this was a logical thing to be studying.
Before we leave this topic, do we know, or do you have any more clarity on how this is communicated at this point?
Honestly, this is Ken, the engineer, who's been learning from the world's best virologists for a month plus. It looks like both the way a cold would spread and the flu are both at play. So a lot of the advice, yes, the aerosol would be flu, and you think of coughing, but really breathing alone will do it. You don't have to just cough. And then that's flu-like, and then cold-like is touch. You touch your face, we shake hands, and so forth. And so all of this same guidance you get, very basic stuff, no rocket science. Wash your hands a lot. Don't touch your face. Cover, cough into your sleeve, because the droplets do, carry. And we're also seeing close contact that we aren't necessarily sure how it's passing, playing a role in transmissibility. So lot still to learn here.
I'll bet.
A lot still to learn. And until we learn more and are more certain, we have to be more cautious, more careful. That's exactly what President Trump has told us. Err on the side of caution for the American people.
I need to hit two big other issues. The Department of Homeland Security announced last week that it's changing the enrollment policy for its trusted traveler programs in New York in response to New York's green light law. Now, this law allows undocumented individuals to apply for driver's license, but prohibits the DMV from sharing information with the Department of Homeland Security. How important is this sharing of information?
Utterly critical. Look,
Why?
I was a state legislator in one of the 3 states hit by 9/11. Of course, New York was another one. It was the big one. We have the Pentagon in Virginia. And we were embarrassed in Virginia that the majority of those hijackers used Virginia driver's licenses to board those planes. And so we did something about it. We improved our information sharing. We improved the security of our licenses. And here we watch New York walk back the other way. Now, yes, they're giving driver's licenses to illegal aliens, but I want people to understand that isn't the issue for the Department of Homeland Security. We wish they wouldn't. Because it's an incentive to come here legally. But the security issue, national security and public safety, is they're blocking the Department of Homeland Security from access to their DMV database, because we can't confirm the person showing me this license is who they say they are. We don't know who owns this car that shows up in an investigation, and we don't get the most up-to-date criminal information, which is critical for the safety of our officers and the communities they're trying to protect.
And the safety of the people. Now, this administration has been warning these cities with sanctuary city policies that there could be consequences. Attorney General William Barr has filed lawsuits against New Jersey, California,
King County, Washington.
And they're pushing back. They're pushing back. I want to read it for you. This is California Congressman Adam Schiff. He's called these attacks on sanctuary city policies retribution by the Trump administration. He says, we're not going to give into this kind of threat or intimidation. California doesn't share his form of xenophobia. Your response?
Who's we, Congressman? We're enforcing the laws that your body passed. So, that's what's at stake here. These are not just whimsical policies being enforced. These are laws on the books, and we're doing it the way Congress told us to do it. And law enforcement throughout the history of this country, with a number of exceptions I can count on one hand, have cooperated across local, state, and federal levels to keep each other safe and to help enforce the laws that each of them were responsible for. And here we have states like New York that are stepping in the way of law enforcement officials, whether they be at ICE or Customs Border Protection, from doing the job Congress has charged them with doing. And you just read a quote from a congressman who, if he doesn't like these laws, he's in the body to try to change them. But the president has said, while they're on the books, we will enforce them.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've got to move on before we run out of time. I know you're pressed. This Asylum Cooperative program that the Trump administration has initiated, so far only Guatemala has signed on to it. But I know you're reaching out to Honduras and El Salvador. 300 asylum seekers from Honduras and El Salvador are now going to Guatemala. Why isn't the U.S. allowing these people in? And some are saying this is incentivizing people to stay home, to not seek asylum.
Yeah.
Because these places are more dangerous than the United States or where they're coming from.
It certainly incentivizes them to not seek asylum as a fraudulent measure. Asylum is about safety, not convenience or even opportunity. Our legal immigration system is for opportunity. Asylum is for safety. Right. And one of the consensuses around the world is that refugee, asylum, migration issues are best handled close to home for whoever the migrant is. We see this with respect to Syria. You can, Venezuela. We can go around the world and talk about that policy being applied across national boundaries. All three countries, Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador, have in fact signed both security and asylum agreements with the United States. They're different for each country. What we're in the process of doing with Honduras is implementing it, the Asylum Cooperative Agreement. It's been in the works since last summer. We signed agreements last summer. And look, our partnerships with these countries are better than they've ever been. You've seen some attempts at illegal caravans coming up, and these countries, protecting their own sovereignty, have interdicted those caravans in ways they weren't capable of doing, because we helped train their folks, and we haven't just demanded things, we've helped them learn and get there so that they have more of the elements of a more sophisticated security system that they govern. They make these choices. They are sovereign countries with their own self-respect. You've heard President Bukele in El Salvador talk about not wanting to lose his youth. You also see President Bukele arresting more MS-13 members. And in fact, the first caravan that attempted to form this year in El Salvador, they went immediately in and arrested the formative member whose brother is an MS-13, real upstanding citizen. And it broke up that caravan. They want to keep their youth, and we want to help them build opportunities in their own countries.
So their own country can thrive.
That's exactly right. I mean, we're not leaving them behind. We're friends and partners and allies. We need them to be as well. And this year and the last year, those relationships have really improved.
Mr. Deputy Secretary, thank you as always. Great to see you. Thank you.
My pleasure.
She spent over 3 decades practicing pediatric and adolescent medicine and counseling teens and their parents. I sat down with her recently to discuss the challenges and pressures facing teen girls and the parents who raise them. Her latest book, Raising a Strong Daughter in a Toxic Culture, is most insightful. Here's my interview with Dr. MEG MEEKER. Get into, Dr. MEEKER, what is at the root of this toxic culture, and why is it affecting girls negatively? I thought boys were most at risk.
Yeah, you know, you would think so, but girls really are at risk because there's a lot of social pressure now on girls, particularly with social media. This is a big, huge problem. So why are girls having so much difficulty? I think that honestly, there's so much coming at them that's confusing them. You know, we know that social media has become a place where girls compete, and they find that, you know, they try to find their self-esteem and their sense of value on social media, and they actually, the more likes they get on social media, the better they feel about themselves. You know, they've got the transgender stuff going on. They're just very confused. We see depression and anxiety rising. Yeah. So I think that, you know, as much as it's coming at girls, I really wanted to equip parents to say, okay, we're going to help our kids navigate this, and we can overcome this. In
your book, you write that parents should focus on one thing: teach your daughter that she was created by a loving God. Why is that so important? And do teenage girls really listen to that message?
Do they listen? Yes. They won't act like they listen, but they do listen to their parents, because parents have more power than the culture. Why do they need to know that they're created in God's image? Because I can't tell you how many 8, 10, 15, even 18-year-old girls truly don't know why they're here. You know, they can do a lot of stuff, they can get great grades, but they don't know why they're here. And it's so fundamental that parents teach them, you know, what's deeper than just the stuff they do. And I think that's really what equips girls to be able to become resilient to a lot of the negative pressures they get in the culture.
You say parents have a role in answering 4 big questions every daughter has. And here they are. We'll put them on the screen. Where did I come from? Am I valuable and significant? Is there a moral standard? Where am I going? Now, how can we help our daughters answer those questions, Meg?
Yeah, very easily, and a lot of questions that parents sort of skip over. Where did I come from? Why am I here? Am I an accident? You know, am I here just because mom and dad decide to have a child? So it's really important to teach kids, no, you're not here by accident. God made you. There's a plan. There's a path. You are deeper. You're to live on a deeper level. Do I have value and significance? One of the big mistakes we parents make is to try to give our kids a sense of value by getting them to be really good at a lot of stuff. We do that because that's what our peers are doing. And there's nothing wrong with getting kids to do a lot of stuff well, that's fine. But they need to understand their value and significance comes from something a whole lot deeper than just the stuff that they do. Is there a moral plumb line? Absolutely. You know, kids need to know the rules. And when we took a lot of the moral standard out, it just made kids crazy. So we parents need to bring that back into our parenting. And where am I going? You know, what am I supposed to be doing when I'm 20 or 30? Is there a roadmap for me? And if so, what is that? And then finally, where am I going after I die? These are existential questions, but believe it or not, even 8-year-old kids can understand them and want answers to them.
Yeah, you know, as you're talking, I'm thinking of my wife, who spends so much time with our children, you know, sacrificed her career to be with the kids every day. And it's so important to spend that time so you understand what their interests are, where they're tending, who's in their social circle. How important is that, Meg? You know, my dear friend Kate O'Byrne, many years ago of happy memory, she said, Raymond, it's really important to be there for your kids, but just as important is knowing who's in their social circle and affecting that circle.
Oh, absolutely, particularly now with social media. You know, our kids can live in a very private world when you think about it. They have their phones, they can communicate with people that we don't know about. But it's very important for parents, A, to understand what their kids are going through so that they can help them navigate it, and B, who are their friends? Because their friends are going to be healthy often and they're going to be unhealthy often. So if you want your child to go in a specific direction, you need to surround your child with kids who want to go in that direction as well, to support them, encourage them, because life gets tough. But girls will do really well if they have 1 or 2 close girlfriends wanting to go in the same direction. They're linked arms with. Tremendous way to keep them safe from a lot of the stuff coming at them.
You talk about social media and the link between social media and depression. What should we as parents be doing? How do you observe and control? Should we limit the screen time? Should we get the software so we can police what they're seeing and whom they're talking to?
All of the above. You know, I think that parents fall into this feeling that they can't invade their teenager's space, that these kids need privacy, that there are things that parents shouldn't know about. And that's not true. Secrets in a home are not healthy. This is new with this generation. So parents are timid about looking at their Facebook, looking at their Instagram, but they need to be in there because kids can't navigate bad stuff on their own. They need adult help. So yes, everything a child sees, even a teenager, needs to be seen by the parent, because if kids know their parent's going to be watching, they're going to say and receive very different messages. So it's really important that parents know what's going on, that they're immersed, and then they need to understand they need to take charge, because even a 16, 17-year-old can't. Social media can become very addictive to girls. Why? Because they want to know what people are thinking. What are people saying about me? Do they like me? So I go into the way parents can help their teenage girls wean down on social media and When kids are home, parents can install a device where they can see what websites their kids are on, what they're doing all the time. This helps kids be accountable, and it really helps kids feel loved when they feel protected by their parents.
Another topic you bring up in the book is feminism, and you write, there is a good version of feminism that we can teach our daughters, but ironically, feminism has discounted femininity and left women confused about who they are, causing endless debates about what is and is not proper feminist behavior. So how do we teach healthy feminism to our daughters?
Well, I think that we teach that by teaching our girls that they can be strong, that they have good talents, they should use those talents, that they should be assertive, and they should know what they want and when they want it, and be able to set boundaries in their lives as they get older. But it doesn't mean that they have to hate people and spew venom to people around them, mostly a lot of their male colleagues and men that they run into. And you know, we've really become a very divided country, not just politically, but men and women are become very divided because a lot of the fallout of the feminist revolution is that we've turned into a culture, particularly with the Me Too movement, where women are suspect of men, they don't trust men, they're angry at men, and in many ways they want to pound them down. And we've talked about that before. You know, being a dad in this culture, the way you're portrayed is not a good thing.
No. Now, what role does a father play in raising a strong daughter? And then run through the mother's role, how the girl sees her, perceives the mother.
Yeah, very different roles, and we can say, oh, the roles should be the same, and I say, ask a child. A daughter needs from her dad the sense that dad is the daughter's first introduction to male love. So when you think about that, if she learns in those early years to trust her dad, to receive love from him, affection, that sets a template for how she relates to men, brothers, uncles, teachers, boyfriends for the rest of her lives. So dad teaches her an enormous lesson there. Dad has a significance and power in a daughter's life that a mother doesn't. Doesn't mean that dad's more important or less important, but it's different. In a daughter's eyes, and this is true for me, if dad says you can do something, it's a done deal. When a mother says that a daughter can do something, a daughter feels, well, my mom has to say that she's mom. So we dismiss it easily. So a dad has a huge authority in a daughter's life that mom may not have. Mom's a safe person. Mothers need to give daughters a sense of they're the mentor. They show daughters how to live as a woman. Very important when it comes to body image, because one of the things that girls always say to me, one of the biggest struggles they have is being thin enough and beautiful enough. Well, a mother can show a daughter, you know, I am strong and I don't need to be a waif. I'm not constantly on a diet. I can show you how to live as a strong woman and not worry about my weight all the time. So a mom really teaches a daughter where to go and how to live. And a dad really comes in and teaches her that she has tremendous value. She can use her God-given gifts, and he teaches her how to love and accept love from men.
Very quickly, your advice to single parents. There are a lot of single mothers out there raising their girls.
Yeah, they can do a fabulous job. They can be a great mom, but they can't be mom and dad. That's the good news, bad news. But it's very important, moms, that you be a good role model for your daughters and expose them to good men in your life. They don't need a lot of time with a good man, but they need to see how a man interacts with you so they can know what to expect from a man as they get older. And they need to know what a good man looks like. What does he talk like? How does he act? You know, what does he say? Does he swear? Does he not swear? To set an image in that daughter's mind of what they should expect from men in their lives as they get older.
Finally, this summer, all athletes competing in the USA Swimming 2020 Summer Nationals, Dr. Meeker, will have to abide by the International Olympic Committee's policies for transgender athletes. That is, those who transition from male to female are eligible to compete in the female category under certain following conditions, such as being a female for 4 years and showing a low testosterone level. Is this fair, in your opinion, to female athletes?
No, absolutely not, because here's what's happening. Try as people may to say that a male is a female and a female is male and that physiologically, biologically, they're the same. They're not. They're not the same physiologically, but in many other ways. And so it really isn't fair to women athletes who fought hard for Title 19, you know, to have women who used to be men come along and beat them. These men have muscles that were formed over many years by, you know, testosterone and the rise of androgens. Their muscles literally are not the same, and they're not going to revert to female muscles just because they had a sex change.
Also, I know lungs are bigger on a male, heart is bigger. So the organs themselves have more capacity than a woman you're competing against in some of these particular events.
Oh, absolutely. You know, absolutely. Biologically, there are enormous differences, as you say, in the organs and the brain and the muscles, the bone structure, hip structure between men and women. And women were crafted physiologically in their body to bear children. Men's bodies are not created and crafted for that. They're made for their bone structure for very different activities. So when we try to intermix those, it doesn't work. And this is really coming back to bite women pretty hard.
Final question. What do you want parents to take away from this book? And why did you write this? You've been focused on this topic of raising sons, raising daughters for a good long time now, and I know you've devoted your career to it.
Yes. I wrote the book because I've heard from thousands of frightened parents saying, I don't know what to do about social media. I don't know when to get my daughter a cell phone. I don't know, you know, how to navigate this transgender stuff with the kids. So parents are afraid, the rising anxiety and depression. So I wrote the book, A, to point out the problems, and B, more importantly, to give parents answers. This is what every parent needs to know. You have, yes, the world is tough. But today, mom or dad, single or married, you have everything you need right now to raise a great and a strong daughter. And you need to just understand the wiring is there and run with it. Trust your instincts. Don't cave to the pressure you feel from your peers. You can raise a very individual and strong daughter.
No, it's tough to stand firm against this tide of the culture, and it's around high school, it's in middle school, it's with your peers, it's everywhere. But it's important not only to show up, but to stand firm. Thank you so much, Dr. Meg Meeker. Raising a Strong Daughter in a Toxic Culture by Dr. Meeker is available everywhere. Online, at bookstores. Go get yourself a copy. Thank you, Meg.
Thank you, Raymond.
Well, that's all the time we have for now. Until next week, the show continues on Facebook or Twitter. You can like me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter. The links are at RaymondArroyo.com. Be sure to catch us next week. Until then, we'll be scouting the world over for all that is seen and unseen. On behalf of the staff and crew of EWTN News, thank you for watching. I'm Raymond Arroyo from Washington, D.C. Bye now.